He was just standing outside a gas station with a cup of coffee when a young officer slammed him to the ground without asking a single question. To Officer Henley, Kevin Marshall was just another suspicious man, not a veteran, not a leader, not a human being. What Henley didn't know? Kevin was the state police commissioner, and he wasn't about to stay silent. But just wait until you hear the shocking turn this story takes, and how justice, in the end, struck back with full force. Kevin Marshall stood just outside the door of a gas station in South Dayton, Ohio, the late summer sun beating down on the cracked asphalt. He held a steaming cup of black coffee in his left hand and his phone to his ear with the right, listening to his wife talk about their grandson's first day at school. He smiled faintly at the mention of a finger-painted picture and adjusted the bill of his dark navy baseball cap. The golden embroidery reading U.S. Army Airborne had dulled over the years, but the pride behind it never had. He was dressed simply: light gray dress slacks, a crisp short-sleeve button-down, black walking shoes, and a pair of polarized aviator sunglasses. His posture was upright, the kind of upright that doesn't leave you even decades after combat. There was a calm, composed dignity about him, a man who had seen too much to be easily shaken. And then, a screech of tires cut through the stillness. A black-and-white patrol SUV jerked to a halt along the curb just a few yards from where Kevin stood. No sirens, no announcements, just the raw, abrasive sound of suspicion pulling up with speed. The door flung open, and a young officer emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, and moving with sharp, erratic energy. Officer Zach Henley looked to be in his late 20s. His hair was buzzed close to the scalp. A tattoo of a coiled snake and the phrase, "Don't tread on me," wrapped around his forearm, clearly visible even beneath his rolled uniform sleeve. His eyes darted, his jaw clenched. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask questions. He just approached. Fast. Deliberate. Kevin turned slightly to glance at him, still on the phone. He lowered it an inch as the officer came within feet of him. "Hey!" Henley barked, tone flat and confrontational. "What are you doing here?" Kevin paused. "I'm buying coffee." He held up the cup gently, then nodded toward the store behind him. "Is there a problem, officer?" "You loitering? Dealing?" Henley snapped, scanning Kevin up and down like he was a threat instead of a grandfather. "You fit the description." Kevin raised an eyebrow behind his sunglasses. "Description of what exactly?" Without warning, Henley lunged forward and grabbed Kevin's wrist, the one still holding the phone. In a single motion, he yanked the device away and flung it to the ground. The screen cracked instantly. "Sir," Kevin said, firm but calm, "you're making a mistake." Henley didn't hesitate. "I've got suspicion. That's all I need," he growled, stepping behind Kevin and jerking both his arms backward. "Turn around. Don't move." "I'm a veteran. I serve—" "I don't care who you are." Henley cut him off, tightening the grip and driving him forward. And then came the moment that froze the entire parking lot. Henley shoved Kevin down, face first, onto the hot concrete, pinning one knee into his back. The coffee spilled, the lid popping off and splashing near his arm. Kevin didn't resist. He didn't shout. But in that silence was something even more powerful: restraint, a controlled fury that ran deep beneath the surface. A mother standing by the pumps covered her child's eyes. A man behind the counter inside fumbled for his phone and began recording. The world had turned, and everyone could feel it. The wrongness was electric in the air. Kevin lay motionless, not because he was powerless, but because he knew better than to escalate. His dignity stayed intact, even as gravel scraped his cheek, even as the world turned sideways. Henley snapped cold metal cuffs around Kevin's wrists and radioed something vague into his shoulder mic. He never asked for a name. He never ran a check. He didn't care. Until a voice shouted from the far side of the lot. "Are you out of your mind? That's Kevin Marshall." Henley turned, squinting toward the source. It was an older man, late 60s, with a worn Army vet ball cap and an American flag embroidered on the chest of his shirt. "What?" Henley snapped. "I said that's Kevin Marshall," the man repeated, marching closer. "You don't know who that is?" Henley straightened slightly. "And who exactly is he supposed to be?" The veteran came to a stop, his voice rising. "He's your boss, you idiot. He's the state police commissioner." 2 hours later, Kevin Marshall sat calmly in a windowless conference room inside the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. The air conditioning hummed faintly, but the room felt heavier than heat could explain. The blinds were drawn. A pot of untouched coffee sat cooling in the corner. The mood was tense, uncertain, the kind that draws out the truth whether you're ready for it or not. Kevin's suit jacket was off. His dress shirt, slightly wrinkled from the incident, still held the quiet pride of a man who'd never lost his composure. A faint scrape ran along his cheekbone. Red marks circled his wrists like silent proof. But he wore no bandages, no ice, no complaint. He sat with his back straight, hands gently folded on the table. No cuffs, no guards. Across from him sat a quartet of power: the county sheriff, eyes heavy with consequence, the city mayor, shifting uneasily in his chair, and 2 representatives from the Department of Justice, one federal, one state, both scribbling notes with nervous precision. The atmosphere was sterile, the stakes were not. And off to the side, pressed against the far wall like a shadow that wanted to disappear, stood Officer Zach Henley. His uniform looked heavier now. His face had lost all its color. A thin sheen of sweat coated his forehead. He looked down, away from Kevin, as if hoping that shame might somehow render him invisible. He wasn't in handcuffs, but the weight of realization was doing far more damage than metal ever could. Kevin didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words were quiet, low and deliberate, but they carried a sharpness that filled the room like steel. "I served this country for 30 years, he began, eyes locked on the mayor. "I led battalions in Iraq. I trained officers in this state, some of whom are now chiefs. I've worn this badge with pride because I believed in what it stood for." He paused, not for effect, but to let truth breathe. "And yesterday," he continued, "I was thrown to the ground like a criminal, like an animal, for holding a phone, for having dark skin, for existing." The mayor shifted again, gaze dropping to the table. One of the justice officials cleared their throat, then said softly, This is unacceptable." But Kevin lifted a hand gently, not to interrupt, but to correct. "No," he said, calm and piercing. "This isn't just unacceptable. This isn't just an incident. This is a symptom. Henley isn't the disease. He's the result. He's the byproduct of a culture that we've allowed to fester, a culture where suspicion outweighs judgment, where uniform excuses prejudice, and where silence protects behavior that should have been condemned years ago." A long, still silence followed. Not one person dared interrupt it. Then Kevin stood. He didn't point fingers. He didn't raise accusations. His presence alone was enough. "I don't want a suspension," he said clearly. "I don't want a resignation or a quiet transfer. I want change." He looked directly at the sheriff. "From this day forward, every academy cadet will undergo bias screening before they wear a badge. From this day forward, every use of force captured on camera will be subject to an external review board. From this day forward, transparency will not be a favor. It will be standard." His voice didn't tremble. If anything, it became steadier. "And as of today," he concluded, "I am not just the police commissioner. I am the voice of every man and woman who has been brought to their knees, not because of what they did, but because of who they were." Henley was dismissed. Not quietly, not with paperwork, with finality. He left the room not as a scapegoat, but as a turning point. His name became the start of a new policy manual, not the end of a scandal. But Kevin didn't stop there. The next morning, seated in a crisp navy suit before CNN cameras, Kevin addressed the nation, not as a victim, but as a leader. He spoke with composure, with clarity. He asked for no vengeance. He offered no dramatic sound bites, just a simple truth. The uniform is only as noble as the man inside it. That same day, the streets of Dayton were filled, not with chants, not with confrontation, with silence. Thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, holding up white placards with black letters. "I am Kevin." I deserve dignity. I serve this country. It wasn't a protest. It was a reckoning. And across the country, America listened.